Offseason is here for the Spurs. Well, I mean, it's been here for a while now. But out of all the teams entering this year's offseason, the Spurs are one of the more interesting teams, and I think are a team that can have a very interesting offseason. I've said the word offseason like 20 times already. It's going to get worse. And that's mainly because out of all the teams that are in a similar situation that they are in, rebuilding, they had the hardest part of the rebuild already done. That's finding their star. They have Victor Wembanyama, and Victor Wembanyama has been everything we thought he would be and more. I mean, I thought he was going to be good as a rookie, but he turned out to be exceptional. I mean, Wemby has already proved himself to be a guy that if he's on your team, you have a chance to win almost any game you're playing in. I mean, there's a lot of games this season they won just based off having him against really good teams. Most notably, the game at the end of the year against the Nuggets that knocked the Nuggets out of the 1 seed and can be a big reason why we had the Dallas Mavericks in the finals, given they didn't have to play Denver. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And I think entering this offseason, there is a huge question kind of looming over the Spurs organization. Now, is it really that big of a question? No, but it's a big question to me. And that question is, do you build organically, which they probably will, or do you go out there and make the big moves now to win? Because like I said before, Wemby has proven himself to be the type of player that he is so good that as long as you have him, your window is open. And so your window is open now. So do you expedite the process this offseason, or do you just build organically, pick up some pieces around the edges, use your draft picks wisely? Or do you say, with the draft capital you do have, with the money you do have, do you go out there and get a big name? There's a lot of ways for them to go. Now, me personally, I think they're probably going to go the organic route, since that's what the Spurs have always done. That's what the Spurs did with Tim Duncan and David Robinson, and that's what they've really done since then, and it's always worked out. I mean, that's how they got Wemby. So that's the way I think they're going to go. But if they were going to go the route of the big moves, there's a lot of names I would like to see them go get. The main two being Trae Young and Darius Garland. Now, both of these names are probably pipe dreams, but if they were able to land any one of these two players, it would be amazing. First, Trae Young is probably one of the more underrated point guards in this league. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he is offensively, and the fact that whatever team he's on, he's going to transform them into a top 10 offense immediately. He is that good. He is that type of offensive hub. And imagine him and Vic playing together is amazing, because Trae Young has been this assist maestro, and he's been throwing lobs to Clint Capella. And that's no shade on Clint Capella, but he's not Vic. He's not a 7'4" skilled big that can really do anything offensively and catch lobs really, really well. And the one thing we saw with the Spurs last year is they need help when it comes to guard play. They didn't have anyone to set the table for Vic, make things easier. Everything he was doing, he was getting the hard way. And imagine if he's with a guy like Trae Young, who has made things easier. As he has worked with nothing. He has worked with lesser to achieve a lot. He got to the conference finals on a team that really shouldn't have got to the conference finals. So imagine him with Vic. A big that talented with the guard that talented is crazy to me. And also, I know that Trae Young isn't the best defender, and a lot of that isn't because of Trae Young. It's mainly because of his size and just things he can't control. That even though I think defense is an effort thing, when you're that small in a league that has so many big wings and big guards, it's just hard. But for him, if he were to land on the Spurs, that wouldn't be that big of a problem, because he has Vic right behind him. And Vic is going to make him right even when he is wrong. And then you have Darius Garland, who I think this is least likely than the Trae Young thing, because we've gotten reports out of the Hawks saying that they're willing to blow it all up. And at first we got rumors that Darius Garland may be on the move, but as of right now, the rumors have switched to they don't really want to trade Darius Garland, because they don't see anything out there that they could get back in return that could keep them winning. And I don't think the Spurs have anything that would help the Cavs win right now, but they do have draft picks, and draft picks can be pretty sexy. But I would love Darius Garland, because Darius Garland is a true point guard. And like I said, Vic has yet to really have that real good guard next to him. And a guard like Darius Garland can help expand his game and just make things easier for him. Now, an underrated target that I have kind of on my wish list, and a target that I think is completely feasible and I think should happen even though it may not, is Anthony Simons. If you don't know who Anthony Simons is, he's a point guard / shooting guard, a combo guard that plays for Portland Trail Blazers. And he's one of those guys that is sneaky still young. I mean, he's only 25. And the reason I can see a guy like him being on the move, given Portland has a lot of guards right now. They have him, they have Scoot, and they have Shaden. And it's looking like Anthony's going to be the odd one out, just given that he's the oldest. He's the one they already paid. And I think they wanted to let the reins go to Scoot and Shaden. And I could see a guy like him being a great help to the Spurs. One, he's just an extra offensive punch. He has proven himself as an NBA scorer, averaging over 20 in the past, I think, 2 or 3 years. And he's a knockdown shooter. And having shooting around Vic could really help highlight one of his more underrated skills, which is his playmaking ability. And given that he's on a team like the Spurs that prioritizes ball movement, I think in the coming years, we're going to see Vic's playmaking expand and just look phenomenal. And surrounding him with shooters like an Anthony Simons could do a lot for him. And also, Anthony Simons is just a very, very talented ball handler and a really good scorer. And a backcourt of him and Devin Vassell sounds pretty nice to me personally. Now, I understand that while they do really need a guard, there's a world where they don't really trade for anybody because they're content with what they have and they don't want to, rush things. So I have a few free agent targets that I would really like them to consider and hopefully sign. The first one being Chris Paul, and that's mainly because, it's Chris Paul. Everywhere Chris Paul has been, especially when he comes to a young team, he helps elevate the players on that roster. And even though for the Spurs, if your name's not Vic and your name's not Devin Vassell, you're probably up for auction. Like, nobody else is untouchable besides those two. Chris Paul can come in there and maybe help expand the game to a guy like a Malachi Branham, of a Jeremy Sohan, of a Blake Wesley, of a Keldon Johnson. Just help people maybe progress faster than they would have without him. Because even though they have great coaching over there, it's helpful to have a coach on the floor, which is what Chris Paul can be. And I understand that he's old, but he won't be asked to do a lot. If he goes there, he's only going to be playing like 20 to 25 minutes, and his main goal is just going to be playmaking. And like I said, defensively, it's fine. Vic is right behind you. He will make you right no matter what. Now, the person I think is most realistic and I would really, really love to see them get is Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones is a 28-year-old guard. Last year, he played with the Wizards. And before that, he was with Memphis. And ever since Tyus Jones has been in the league, he's just been a really, really good, steady point guard. Last year he averaged 12 points with 7 assists and only 1 turnover per game. That's crazy. His assist to turnover ratio since he's entered the league has always been among some of the highest in the entire NBA. And like I said, they haven't really had somebody that could really steady the storm and just make things easier and just find Vic. They just need a point guard that would be willing to find Vic. And Tyus Jones can do that while also just keeping the ball safe. And also last year, he shot 41% from 3. Like I said, shooting can help expand your offensive game. And I think if they're able to get shooters around Vic, we ain't ready for that. That's scary to me. That is truly scary to me. Now, some of the other targets I would really like to see them get is like the main one being Patrick Williams. I see a young wing that has a lot of untapped potential. And if you're a team like the Spurs that has the money and is rebuilding, a guy like Patrick Williams is a guy you definitely take a swing on, especially given how good your organization is and coaching staff is. You can be the one to get all of Patrick Williams' talent up out of him. The Bulls have never really been good at player development. We see every time a young player leaves there, they become better. Wendell Carter, Lauri Markkanen, to name a few. And I think Patrick Williams could be that next kind of player. And having him end up in a place like there where they kind of need wing help. Julian Champagne was starting last year for them. And not that he's a bad player, but if you're really trying to compete and you're really trying to win, I don't think he's the type of wing you have starting. I think Patrick Williams could come in there and just be a key cog in what they got going on for the future. And then you also have DeAnthony Melton, who is one of those other sneaky guys that's only 26. And to me, DeAnthony Melton is just a winning player. He plays really good defense. He's essentially a 3-and-D guard. And he can come in there and provide a lot of defensive help to maybe take your defense to the next level. Because my thing with Vic is, as long as you have a guy like Vic, you're going to be a top 10 defense. Vic alone is going to help your defense out tremendously. We already saw it this past year. How many times that it will be a 3-on-1 break, him being the only defender, and people will run out of the paint because they were scared of Vic. Vic while he may have a lot of crazy block numbers, I would love to see the numbers, if there's any way to track this, of how many times people have just decided not to shoot in his vicinity. Because I guarantee if we counted that, Vic will be the highest because there's been so many times that I've seen of players like, nah, I ain't shooting this because Vic right in front of me. Vic a few feet away, but for Vic, that's not a few feet. That's just a raising my hand. So imagine pairing him up with a guy like D'Anthony Melton, who is a brilliant point of attack defender, and is only 26. And I understand that last year he had a lot of health problems given he didn't really play for the Sixers. But, I mean, with the position the Spurs are in, this is a guy that you can't take a flyer on. Then you have, like, KCP, who they can just pay what he's worth. I mean, 3-and-D player can really come in there and help you offensively and defensively and just be a veteran presence. And then you got Gary Trent Jr. If you need scoring, if you need shooting, Gary Trent Jr. can definitely provide that for you. So those are just a few names. I think they should kind of target this free agency. And even names like a Goga Badatsi. I can never say his name. Goga Badatsi. I mean, he was a really good backup center for the Magic. And I understand you have Vic, but always be nice to have just, some help behind him. And maybe a big that you can play with him, given how versatile Vic is. Imagine that, running a Twin Towers lineup. Insane. Now, one of the more interesting parts about the Spurs offseason is not the money that they have. It's the draft capital they have. I mean, this year they have 2 top 10 picks. And I'm pretty sure they have some other picks littered like later in the draft. But the main 2 picks are those top 2 picks. And there's so many things they can do with these 2 picks. They could just stay pat and draft with them, or they can trade down, because there's a lot of teams, I think, out there that will be willing to trade up with them. I can see a world where Portland wants to trade up. I can see the world where Memphis and Chicago want to trade up to go in there and get their guys, since they kind of need a little bit of help. And I can also see a world where maybe the Nets say, all right, we want the 4th or 8th pick, and we have Mikal Bridges. How do you feel about that? If I'm the Spurs, I'm taking that. Mikal Bridges can help your defense tremendously, and also offensively, he's not going to take away from anybody, but help you by providing shooting, and another guy who can, if need be, score with the ball in his hands. I just came up with that on the fly as an idea because I thought of the Nets and how they probably want to move up given they don't have a first-round pick, and that would be nice. Let's just say they stay pat, which I think they probably will end up doing, because for a team like the Spurs, this is an amazing draft for them. I know there's a lot of other teams in the lottery that are dreading this year's draft, and it's mainly because they're looking for a star. The Spurs aren't looking for a star. They're looking for really, really good complementary pieces. And this draft is littered with guys that are just really, really good basketball players and may not look like stars now, but could potentially one day be stars. And if they're not, they can be just very productive NBA players, which is the goal, right? I mean, not every pick in the lottery always turns out to be a star. And that's why I don't like when people talk about this draft saying, man, it's terrible, it's ass, it's the worst of years. I think that's objectively not true. I think people are just saying that because I think we've been spoiled over the past 4 or 5 years, always having that consistent number 1 guy and that guy that everybody could point to and say he's going to be a star. We don't have that this year. So people have to work harder to find out who they think is going to be the star, and they don't like that. I think this draft is littered with a ton of talent and a ton of people that can be future all-stars and borderline all-NBA players. And that's what we get in normal drafts. Not every draft has like 5-2 Hall of Famers. That's a crazy difference in numbers. But yeah, I think this draft is really, really good, and people who call it bad are just lazy and not really doing their homework. But that's just me. But like, let's say they stay pat at 4-8. There are a lot of different ways they can go. I got 5 people that I really, really want them to get. The main one being Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle has to be one of my favorite players in this draft. I mean, I love two-way ability, and Stephon Castle is that. He's a guy that can project to be like a taller Derek White. I mean, he's 6'5" in socks, 210 pounds with a 6'9" wingspan, and he plays winning basketball. He's unafraid to do the dirty work. He is a monster defensively, and I know at UConn he had a little bit of trouble when it came to scoring at times and shooting, but I can definitely see those things just being, just how different the college game is, and him coming into the league and having a better offensive skill set than a lot of people see or saw in college. I mean, that happens with a lot of players. And honestly, I just really like him. I will low-key even be surprised if he's even there at 4, given how high I am on him personally. But him with the Spurs, amazing. Another guy is Nikola Topic. This league is going to be littered with Nicolas in the next few years. But, I mean, he's probably the best playmaker in this draft. Is very comfortable coming off screens. And if he's comfortable coming off screens with people with randoms, imagine what he's going to do with a guy like Vic. Like I said, they need point guard play. If they don't feel like addressing it in free agency or trading for it, you can get Nikola Topic. I mean, you have 2 top 10 picks. You have 2 swings to get a guy like that. Or you can get a guy like Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd is somebody that I really like because I think he's the guy in this class that he might not have like the all-star ceiling, but his floor is very low. He's just a really, really good basketball player and can seamlessly fit with any team trying to win. Given he doesn't need the ball in his hands to be special, but when he does, he can do special things. He's a really, really good shooter. He's a passable playmaker when need be. And also, he just has a very polished game. To me, he reminds me of a more polished Jordan Hawkins. I know it's a crazy comparison given Jordan Hawkins was drafted just last year, but to me, they're very similar players. Just Reed Shepherd is a little bit better with the ball in his hands and is a little bit better defensively. While he may not be the best, he tries a lot. And I see a guy like Reed Shepherd going to the Spurs and being a type of like Dante DiVincenzo-esque player for them, and a guy that a lot of people fall in love with and will be a fan favorite, considering that he projects to be one of the better role players in the league. And then after that, you have his Kentucky teammate, Rob Dillingham, who in this draft is probably the best on-ball scorer. I mean, watching Rob is just so fun. I mean, that's a guy who's going to go out there and get a bucket. If he can't, he's going to figure out a way to get the ball to other people and make it work. I've seen a lot of people compare him to like Lou Williams or like a Bones Highland, and I definitely see that. I see a guy who's like a little spark plug, and I wouldn't mind at all seeing the Spurs take him with the 4th pick, just saying, all right, we have this pick, let's go out and get just a little spark, a little energy, a little guy that can be energy off the bench or potentially in the starting lineup. And I know he has a little bit of defensive limitations, but like I said, Vic is behind you. He can make you right. And then the next one is Cody Williams. You know, like I said, they kind of have a need at that wing spot, and a guy like Cody Williams, he has all the talent to be something very special, but I think he just needs to have it honed and properly coached up out of him, and a place like the Spurs can do that. I mean, he's probably one of the more safer picks. He projects to be an elite two-way role player and has the potential to have a very rich offensive game. And if you're the Spurs, you're fine with taking the potential. You're fine with taking the project because of how well you coach, and like I said, the fact before, you have Vic. You know, it's okay to, you know, swing and miss a few times when you got a guy like Vic. And especially when you have 2 first-round picks, 2 top 10 picks, it's okay to swing at what could be seen as a project. Now, other players I can definitely see them go out and get is like a Matas Buzelis. I'm probably saying his name wrong. A guy who's like a Lamar Odom type, can score with the ball in his hands. Had a down year shooting in the G League Ignite, but again, that was just 1 year. In high school, he was a really, really good shooter. Then there's like Ron Holland, a guy that I think may mess around and be like the Cam Whitmore, a guy that we projected to be a top 5 pick, but then falls very low. But I could definitely see him going to a team like the Spurs. Like, there's a lot of ways for this team to go in this upcoming draft, and I think the Spurs are going to walk away with probably one of the best drafts, considering the fact that they're not going to have to reach for anybody. You know, you don't have to reach for a star. You don't got to reach for somebody who you want to be your first or second best player. You're just trying to find the best player possible, and you're going off of fit. And it's so good when you can go into a draft and just draft off of fit and not out of like necessity and just talent and just try and stack up on talent. You have talent right now. You just need the pieces around that talent being Vic. With that being said, I know a lot of people are bouncing around. Do they think the Spurs will be a playoff team next year? I think they will be a play-in team. I can see this team being anywhere between 7, 8, 9, and 10. I think that's a nice little range for them, given I think the West is going to be very, very hard. I mean, even though Denver may lose a few key pieces, there's still Denver, Minnesota, Dallas, OKC is going to get better. We don't really know what's happening in New Orleans, but New Orleans is always competitive. Memphis is going to be back. We got to see what happens, you know, in LA. Houston is a very, very, very sneaky team that could mess around and be a team we see as a top 5 seed. You know, there is a lot of talent in the West, so I wouldn't be surprised if they are a playing team. And I feel like in a playing type scenario, they can beat anybody they play, given that 9 times out of 10, they're going to have the best player in that series being Victor Wembanyama. So I see them as a playing team next year, but that really depends on what type of offseason they can have. Like, I don't think there's anywhere that they can go wrong, and that's mainly because I really trust them, but there's a way they can completely win it and dominate and just have a good one. And I think that will kind of determine where I project this team to be next year. So I think the Spurs have easily probably the brightest future in the league. I mean, it's easy to have the brightest future in the league when you have an alien on your team.